So good day, everyone. My name is Natasha Udagama. I am the International and Community Engagement Program Manager with AGU's Thriving Earth Exchange. I am very excited to lead this second informational session for our upcoming January 2021 cohort. And as I mentioned earlier, this is a community leader informational session. I'm joined by my colleagues from AMS and ASTEC, Ms. Tiernan Doyle and Ms. Leslie Markham, as well as I say, Jack Fellows as well. If you wouldn't mind just briefly introducing yourselves, and then we will move on. Leslie?
Sure. Hi, I'm Leslie Markham from the Association of Science and Technology Centres, and I am the Senior Manager for Impact Initiatives and involved very heavily in our community science work. Very pleased to be part of this Thriving Earth Exchange and AMS joint venture. Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
And I'm Jack Fellows. I'm a weather and climate researcher, retired now, and have been working on climate community science projects for about the last 25 years, and working primarily right now through the American Meteorological Society.
Excellent, thank you, Jack. Tiernan.
Hi everyone, my name's Tiernan Doyle. I'm the Public Outreach and Engagement Specialist with the American Meteorological Society. I work fairly closely with our local chapters and all things outreach, so I'm very excited to speak with you all today.
Thank you. So just so you know, in today's informational session, we'll provide you with a brief introduction and overview of AGU's Thriving Earth Exchange, as well as AMS and ASTEC. A few examples and typical project life cycles from a couple of our community science projects that we've done in the past. A little bit of guidance on completing your community science application, and then we'll launch into a little bit of Q&A. With that, welcome everyone. Thank you again for joining. My name is Natasha Udagama, as I mentioned. I work with AGU's Thriving Earth Exchange. AGU is a science society whose mission is to support and inspire a global community of individuals and organizations interested in discovery in earth and space sciences and its benefit for humanity and the environment. We are a Earth and Space Science Society of over 200,000 members and affiliates in 137 countries. We've been working on the Thriving Earth Exchange for the last 8 years. And Thriving Earth Exchange is essentially a program of the AGU that is strengthening and enhancing collaboration among communities like yours, scientists and partner organizations, so that all communities can build healthy, resilient, thriving, just, and ecologically responsible futures. Our vision at Thriving Earth Exchange is to be a leader in contributing to global well-being by supporting communities' awareness and application of science, and promotes equity by ensuring that all communities benefit from the opportunity to participate in, contribute to, and guide in the use of scientific knowledge. So just to give you a little bit of a sense of what our program does, we essentially leverage our Earth and Space Scientist members to work with communities like yours to advance your priorities around climate, natural hazards, and natural resources. So the process by which we do this is what we call community science. And Thriving Earth Exchange has developed its own brand of community science, and it's part of this larger community of co-creation, co-production, co-management, and all of these other terms that you see at the top. But we define community science as the process by which scientists and communities do science together to advance one or more community priorities. And it encourages communities, particularly those that might be historically marginalized and oppressed, to guide, participate in, learn from, and benefit from science. So with that, I'll turn it over to Tiernan to talk a little bit about AMS.
Thanks, Natasha. So the AMS stands for the American Meteorological Society. This is a basically professional organization in the United States promoting and disseminating information about atmospheric, oceanic, and hydrologic sciences. And our mission here is to advance the atmospheric and related sciences, technologies, applications, and services for the benefit of society. So the AMS, we are not at all as large as AGU. We have just over 13,000 members in around 100 countries. And those members are professionals, scholars, but also students, teachers, corporations, and weather enthusiasts. So in terms of what kind of brought us to be so excited about partnering with the Thriving Earth Exchange is this emphasis on community science. So the AMS publishes 11 journals and magazines and is really an important collector and distributor of research and scientific inquiry. But as the AMS reached its centennial last year, and we see ever increasing impacts of climate change and disinformation about science, the councils and officers of AMS did a lot of soul searching and got a lot of feedback from our professional members and all of our members that they wanted and needed better ways to connect science and the impacts of science to the public. So they really wanted to put more emphasis on creating and delivering those services, again, for the benefit of society. So as a result of these efforts, we have reconfigured all of our boards and commissions to support diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. So not just creating a separate commission for DEI, but really seeing that as a thread that runs through all of the AMS. And so this has resulted in efforts, for example, from the AMS Latinx board, where they've recreated our entire weather glossary in Spanish. So finally, we can help weather broadcasters and the National Weather Service better distribute safety information in different languages. We've also created a new board on community service, which connects AMS members to volunteer efforts internationally and throughout the United States. And through this board, we are able to partner with the Thriving Earth Exchange and connect the expertise of our scientists and professional members to the priorities of community members, so that together they can learn and decide where science is going to go next into the next centennial. So we're really excited about the Thriving Earth Exchange and about getting to partner with Aztec as well. So I'll toss it over to you, Leslie.
Thanks, Tiernan. So the Association of Science and Technologies Centers, Aztec for short, is a network of 700 plus science and technology centers and museums, nonprofits, companies, and other organizations focused on increasing the public understanding of and engagement with science and technology. Collectively, Aztec members welcome more than 110 million people each year in 50 or so countries, where they engage the public in a wide array of scientific and technical topics, including physical, biological, natural, and social sciences, and also engineering, mathematics, technology, and problem solving. Aztec includes a wide breadth of science and technology centers, natural history museums, children's museums, nature centers, aquariums, planetariums, zoos, botanical gardens, and other organizations. And we have members in all 50 states in the United States. And our members can be found in urban and rural parts of the country. About half of our members are small community serving institutions, and they have small but very passionate staff. And others of our members are very large and well known, such as the American Museum of Natural History in New York and the Smithsonian's National Museum of Natural History. All of our members, however big or small, share a commitment to supporting lifelong learning, connecting science and society, engaging diverse communities, and partnering to tackle global and local challenges. So let me just tell you a little bit about our community science initiatives. In 2018, Aztec did an extensive listening tour of our members to inform our new strategic direction. And we heard very clearly from our members that they wanted to deepen their connections in their communities and also form new connections. And from this listening work, ASTC developed several community science initiatives to connect and support our members in building capacity for their own community science work. So what is community science to ASTC and to our members? So for us, community science is an emerging practice for the Science and Technology Centre and Museum field, aimed at nurturing relationships between science and communities. Now, it is an emerging practice for us, but we know that there's already a lot of community science going on within communities, and that we are new to this table. So we define community broadly as connected or organized groups of people who share either a common geography, jurisdiction, set of characteristics, or interest and goals. And this increasingly popular method of collaboration gives science engagement practitioners and scientists the opportunity to collaborate with community members to do the science that advances community priorities. And you'll hear a lot of similarities in the way that we describe community science, because we model a lot of the great Thriving Earth Exchange work that they're already doing and have been doing for some years. So our members take a wide variety of approaches to community science, and often because they're bricks and mortar place-based institutions, they have the ability to gather community members. So some of the ways that they engage in community science are through public dialogue and deliberation programs on how science, technology, and innovation intersect with our lives. So they may gather community members interested in talking about particular subjects, such as flooding or driverless cars. The other way, and another model that our members use is co-creation and co-design. So with their community members, they seek help in designing exhibits or content for programming and curriculum and project-based learning opportunities. And many of our members have exhibits in their museums that depict things that are happening locally. So obviously having community members with local deep knowledge helps to make sure that the exhibits are accurate and also will resonate with museum visitors. Another good example is citizen science projects. One of our members is the Science Museum of Virginia, and they have a citizen science project that involves community members collecting data for heat mapping around the city of Richmond. And this data has been used to understand the impact of climate change on the city and has been presented to the local government officials for action. And the fourth category is environmental and social justice initiatives in collaboration with researchers and supported by scientific evidence, data, and technology. And I think that the Thriving Earth Exchange work is a really good fit for that category. So some of our members are quite experienced in community science work, while others are just beginning to explore it. So to support our members, we're continuing to listen to what they're doing and how we can help support their work. So we're currently having a series of workshops with our members and other institutions, communities, and individuals connected to community science to crowdsource some good examples to share with the field. And we're developing a framework that highlights how community science can be done well within ASTC member institutions. So we hope that this work will help our members to be able to train staff within their museums to address community priorities, and also use the framework and experimental models to help understand community science and community priorities. So we're very excited about this fellowship opportunity with Thriving Earth Exchange and the American Meteorological Society, and I look forward to hearing your questions about this endeavour. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leslie and Tiernan. Really appreciate that. And just to build on that, just to give you a sense of what a community science project team might look like, especially given our really exciting partnerships with ASTC and AMS. You all as community leaders are essential to a community science project team. You bring the community context, knowledge, insights, and connections to your communities. You will represent and speak on behalf of your community. You'll be engaged widely within your community and ensure that the project is responsive to those community priorities that are relevant and impactful for your community. And then there's your community scientist or group of scientists. This person brings scientific knowledge, insights, and connections. They're essentially engaging as a representative of the scientific community, and they ensure that the science is relevant, responsive, and meaningful for community priorities. So essentially, you will be liaising directly with your scientists. But what is a slight innovation on the Thriving Earth Exchange process is that Community Science Fellow, as Leslie just mentioned. So the Community Science Fellowship is this opportunity for young, early career, retired, science-interested public to learn the community science process that Thriving Earth Exchange has developed in the last 7 years, and act as a project manager to guide your team through this process. So guiding the community leaders with the scientists together to ensure that the communication, the coordination is sound, taking that idea that you have provided to us from idea to implementation, being that primary connecting point to Thriving Earth Exchange, AMS, and the Aztec networks and resources, and is essentially responsible for recruiting the community scientists. So we, as much as possible, try to say that there must be at least 2 community leaders that are representing your community. As much as possible, they should be working as, you should be working as co-leaders. Maybe one person takes the lead, maybe another person is a second, but as much as possible, you're working together. There will always be at least 1 community scientist, sometimes up till 5. We try to keep it as tight as possible, but we are also open to needing additional scientific expertise, thus the additional scientists that could be on your project. And then there will be 1 community science fellow, and this is the person that acts as that project manager. So essentially, you are the community leaders. You will be working with a community scientist who is a volunteer or a group of scientists. And then your community science fellow is also a volunteer, but working as a fellow to project manage your project from idea to inception. So just giving you a little bit of a sense of our process at Thriving Earth Exchange. We have a 3-step process with 1 step flowing through all 3 of these steps. The first is scope. And scope is all about turning your community idea into an actionable project that our scientists in the AMS, Aztec, and the AGU networks can work on with you. So what that means is that you would have a series of conversations with your community science fellow. After the community science fellows are trained in late January, they would be connected directly to you to have these series of conversations to really try to understand what is the nature of your priority in your community, and how might a community scientist be able to address it. Once you've developed a project description in collaboration with your community science fellow, you then move on to match. And match is all about using that project description to really find the right scientist or scientists who might be able to work on that project. So it's all about finding the appropriate scientific candidates, but also trying to ascertain whether those scientific candidates have the right knowledge, expertise, and soft skills, the ability to communicate, the ability to liaise with various folks in your community, and to work well within as partners in your community. So basically that community science fellow will vet your community scientists, interview them, provide references to you, and then basically provide you with recommendations so that you will have an opportunity to choose who you will work with. So by the end of the match phase, you're connected to those scientists, you've had an introductory call, and then you move on to solve. And solve is all about doing your 6 to 18-month project. So as I mentioned, these projects last anywhere from 6 to 18 months. That means that with your fellow and eventually with the scientists, you'll determine exactly how long your project should be. In this phase, you'll work with the community science fellow and your community scientists to develop a project plan and realize the milestones that you've co-created together. Your community science fellow will be essentially in charge of project managing, making sure that you all are on target with your project plan and make sure that you hit all the milestones that you intend to hit so that you eventually realize impact in your community. And then finally, last but not least, and it is, as you can see by this diagram, it happens throughout all three phases, is share. And share is all about sharing the highlights, the milestones, the results and outcomes throughout all phases of the community science project. So there will be opportunities in all three phases to really share the progress and the outcomes and impacts of your project. So just to give you a sense of some of the projects that we've worked with in the past, I wanted to tell you a couple of examples of some projects that we've done. In this first example, it's in the city of Durango, Colorado came to us because they were interested in doing a greenhouse gas emissions inventory. They were urged by the residents to advance these sustainability initiatives in the city, and they were, the city of Durango had a commitment to curbing greenhouse gas emissions in the city. So in this particular example, we partnered through the National League of Cities, which is one of our what we call community-facing organizational partners. So these are partners who help us connect to communities like yours to identify community leaders who would be interested and willing and ready to work with our scientists. So in this particular case, the National League of Cities connected us with Ms. Imogen Ainsworth, who's the sustainability coordinator at the city of Durango, Colorado. And they were particularly interested after having completed a county-wide greenhouse gas emissions inventory in 2008 using 2005 data, that they needed to create an updated greenhouse gas inventory for the city of Durango. Their objective was to create an inventory using current best practices and methodologies that could be used to establish priorities for emissions reduction and be relatively easily repeated in future years. So we were looking, when we were talking to Imogen, we were asking her a little bit about what are the strengths of the community, how invested is the community in this project, what was the buy-in like from her bosses, other county departments, what are the community's particular challenges in getting this done. In her case, she said that there was some money that had been set aside, like $50,000 that was set aside to do this study, but they were actually able to save that because they heard about the Thriving Earth Exchange, and they were eventually able to do a solid waste project with the money that they'd saved. And so when we talk to the community leaders, we essentially try to figure out how these projects, these ideas connect to Earth and space science, and how exactly might a scientist or group of scientists contribute in a 6 to 18 month period. So once we had that project developed, Imogen was telling us that she was particularly interested in forging a relationship with Fort Lewis College, which is located in Durango, Colorado, just across the street from where she worked. And it was kind of funny to hear that that was something that they were trying to do and that they hadn't been able to do. But it really helped really hone in what we needed to do in this particular community. And we were able to find Dr. Lori Williams from Fort Lewis College and Dr. Joanna Gordon-Casey, formerly of the University of Colorado Boulder, who eventually also came over to Fort Lewis College. Both of these scientists, well, Dr. Williams is actually an engineer, but Dr. Joanna Gordon-Casey came to us through another connection who had worked on a Thriving Earth Exchange project in our Denver project. So she was in the same lab and had heard about the work that had been done. So we vetted these two candidates. We had conversations with them, tried to get a sense of what their motivations were for working with Durango, and got a sense of what their softer skills were. Would they be able to work with Imogen in an equitable way as much as possible? So then we connected them to these two, and they moved on to the solve phase. And in the solve phase, essentially, as I mentioned, we provide ongoing coaching and connections to make an impact. In this particular case, the city of Durango, Imogen and her two community scientists needed very little coaching and support during, due to, I think, mainly Imogen's leadership, persistence, and organizational skills. And also, I would say with the two scientists, their commitment and open-mindedness and the expertise of Drs. Williams and Casey helped to move this project forward in a very timely manner, such that they were able to help Imogen produce this report by June of 2019. So in terms of share, this particular project was really amazing at being able to work with those two local scientists, which helped to share the workload of data collection and reporting. They shared the report with their city council, the Durango City Council. The work of the scientists provide a little bit more insight and support on data calculations and analysis. And by seeking this external expert advice on the inventory, it added a level of legitimacy that I did not have to the final product, and it made it a powerful tool to help Imogen and her team influence decision-making in Durango. So this is an infographic on the slide that the team developed together to be able to present to the Durango City Council. So share happens, as I mentioned, through the scope, match, and solve phase. And it's really all about celebrating those successes and exchanging methods, processes, and tools. Eventually, we want to be able to have projects that complete with Thriving Earth Exchange share their process and their methodology, such that other communities that are also grappling with similar issues might be able to adapt and replicate it accordingly. So then just briefly hitting on another project that we did a few years ago in the town of Barnesville, Ohio, in southeastern Ohio. They're dealing with hydraulic fracturing, which has led to a lot of concerns over potential health risks. Barnesville was paired with a couple of scientists to do some sampling of water quality, environmental monitoring, and also engaged very heavily in local meetings and tours. So their original goal in this project was to educate communities about the risks of hydraulic fracturing to the area from that rapidly expanding industry, and also establish a water monitoring program due to the threats to Barnesville's water supply from fracking. The team was very nimble and flexible in that they allowed their goals to shift a little bit as events transpired in the area, particularly a blowout at the fracking well pad that resulted in brine and gas plume that lasted over 20 days. And so they were eventually able to adjust accordingly and develop a project that was able to, that again, included a lot of community members and eventually influenced other communities in the area to also seek opportunities to work with Thriving Earth Exchange, such that we have several now in the Ohio, Pennsylvania region working on this hydraulic fracturing issue. So just to give you a sense, just as a reminder, our application deadline is November 6th. The link is here on the slide. I just want to walk you through this application. It's a very simple application that basically is all about asking you a little bit more about your community. Just give us a little bit of background about your community, where it's located, what are some of the defining features. Tell us a little bit about the makeup of the people in that community. Who is involved? Who do you represent? And then when we ask you a little bit more about the project idea and the priority, provide as much context as possible as to why it's a priority and who in your community prioritizes that. Try to provide as much evidence that it is a larger issue that a lot of your community members are concerned about. And then again, in the wider, how is the wider community engaged? Who do you represent? Who are the people in your community bought into this priority? And think really specifically about justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. Who has not been engaged that should be engaged? Who else is engaged already? And who do you represent at large? And then how have you engaged on this topic previously? Provide some names and context for how you've worked with external collaborators, including consultants, other scientists, other resources like museums. That sort of context will help us match you with museums, AMS chapters, science and technology centers as well. And we just want to get a sense with how adept you are with collaborations outside of your community or within your community. And then moving on to the latter part of the form. So provide a time frame about, in the question, how time sensitive is the issue or project? If at all possible, provide some kind of time frame, how it aligns with existing plans that you have, a climate action plan, some kind of action that you're doing as a community, or a grant that you're planning to apply for. That will help us sort of understand why you're asking to be part of this cohort. And then under a referral source, it's really important actually. We really want to know how you heard about Thriving Earth Exchange and this opportunity, because we'd really like to be able to thank our partners and others who have who referred us to you. And then as much as possible, if you do have some supplemental information and any attachments, reports, and things like that, we would be happy to see those, and that would be very useful as well for our ability to match you with the appropriate fellows and to ensure that you're a good fit for this particular cohort.
Hey, Natasha, could I ask a question? This is Jack.
Yeah, sure, Jack.
For that part of the application where you would check the box for January 2021, let's suppose you're not quite ready. So I assume you can still fill this out and maybe not check that box because you're still interested, but you're not quite ready.
That's right. That's right. That's a really great point, Jack, and a great question. So yeah, if you're not quite ready for this cohort, or say if this cohort becomes full and you're not selected for it, we will be doing future cohorts, and they're pretty much going to be quarterly in the coming years. So if you're interested and your project for some reason does not make it through to January 2021, we can defer you to another cohort. So that's not a problem. But if it is time sensitive, and if there is a reason that you must get into the January 2021 cohort, please do indicate that, because that is important. So just to reiterate, community science is all about community voice coming first. Your voices are really important in setting the tone and the development of the project that is going to be impactful for your community. We believe that all communities deserve access to science to advance your priorities. That is fundamentally Thriving Earth Exchange's mission, and the partners that we're working with, AMS and Aztec, also believe in this, and so thus are part of this cohort. Science is a tool to help drive solutions. So science is just one of many tools that can help develop really concrete, impactful, feasible, and sustainable solutions and tools for your community. And short-term immediate impact seeds long-term culture of community science. So these short-term projects, we're hoping that they will start to seed a long-term revolution and culture shift in not only our scientific culture, but in the way that community leaders like yourselves and our scientists work together. So just so you know, a lot of these Thriving Earth Exchange projects won't necessarily solve your issues or the priorities in your communities, but they will try to give you that step up, and you will then be able to apply for other funding or build relationships as necessary. So just to reiterate that. And with that, I will just be quiet and open it up for questions. And there are various ways that you can contact myself, Leslie, and Tiernan.
Yeah, hi, this is Gary Harris. So if we applied before in the past, and
Hi, Gary.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
do we have to try again? Do we have to fill out the application again?
That's a good question, Gary. No, you do not. All you have to do is just let us know that we can reactivate your application, and then it'd be likely that I will reach out to you for a pre-scope just to see where you are with the project and make sure that it is a fit for this particular cohort.
Okay, all right.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it does. It does. And maybe for some of the other folks online, what are some of the critical success factors in the application process that will give you a go, no go?
Yes, yes. It's a great question. So one of the critical success factors is wide community buy-in. So as much as possible, it's important to have at least 2 community leaders that are going to be working on this. So you might apply on behalf of your community, but there should be others who can step in case you're not able to work. Sorry, I should stop this. I just realized I'm still sharing the screen. That you're not able to, if you're not able to work on the project for any particular reason, or you've got to step away for something else. We just basically want to make sure that there'll be someone that will be able to work with your community science fellow and your scientists. Another critical factor I would say is that it is a priority for the community that you're representing. So if your community is if you're like from a city, or if you're from a neighborhood group or from an action group, like that, you have a critical mass of people who also believe that that is a priority for your community. So for instance, we work with a lot of different flooding communities, and most of them are neighborhood groups. And if they can show us that they are working within a group that is of a certain size, it can be like 30 members, 150 members, but they have a critical mass of interest in this particular priority. Another important factor is that you have the time and you have and you can spend a certain amount of effort towards this project. So that's about 2 to 3 hours a week. We ask of community leaders is to be able to spend that amount of time working on this project, and it can vary. So that might be spread out over your 6 to 18-month timeline, but sometimes it's a little bit more in the beginning or a little less at the end, or vice versa. So those are some of the critical factors, I'd say. I know I have some of my colleagues on the line here, Kelly, maybe Melissa. If you have anything else to add, please chime in.
I think you covered it, Natasha. I don't have anything to add.
Okay, great.
Quick question again.
Sure.
In terms of evidence of support, basically, what would you like to see? A roster of signatures, photos, video testimonies?
No, none of that is necessary. It's really just about having someone else who is willing to like be on a pre-scope and also on all of your scoping calls and meetings. So you don't have to have the entire community involved or any signatures like that, but it is important to have at least someone else who might be willing to be on scoping calls with you and can provide some modicum of support.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Natasha. I have a question.
Sure.
So I work at the regional level for 6 counties. We specifically work on hazard mitigation planning, and we're updating our hazard mitigation plan and want to include some items regarding flood mitigation policy. Is there any issues with that scale, or does it need to be a smaller scale?
Not at all, Olivia. That's a great question. So if you are representing like a regional organization, for instance, we worked with the Metropolitan Area Planning Commission on a flood vulnerability assessment for the Boston area. Yes, we are happy to consider that.
Okay, that's awesome. Yeah, we're a metropolitan planning organization as well. So I was just
checking. Oh, okay.
Yes, yeah. And kind of following up with that. So at a regional level, like support, like showing community support looks different. How would you expect that from like a regional level versus just a smaller community or smaller group?
I think just as long as you've got support, like if you are a decision maker within your organization, or you've got the backing of some decision maker, say your boss, I think that should be sufficient. And you know, if your organization basically speaks to the issue as a priority for your organization.
And then finally, thank you. Sorry, I just had an abundance of questions come up.
No problem. That's what it's for.
Awesome. So I kind of I'm like mulling over two different ideas. I don't need both of them. I'm just trying to figure out which one is best. Is that possible to include in the application two different ideas, and whichever one works better with whomever is available? Is that okay?
That's perfectly fine. That's perfectly fine. So you will be getting into the details of scoping out a project with your community science fellow in late January. Before that, if you apply and we think that your application fits in some way, one or the other, you would probably have a pre-scoping call with myself, and then we'll sort of talk through what could be a priority, and then I'll give you some pointers on sort of how to proceed should you be selected for the cohort.
Awesome. Thank you, Natasha.
You're welcome. Any other questions, comments? Okay. Well, I don't know if we have any comments in the chat. Aw. Excellent. So just as a reminder, applications close at midnight on November 6th. So if you're one of those last minute people, we will take your application at 11:59 p.m. Eastern. The application, if you have any issues with the application itself, please feel free to reach out to myself or anyone on our team. You can reach out to us by email or by phone. Maybe I'll just throw up that slide real quick again.
And this is not a competition for a certain number of slots, correct? This is
actually there is a limited number for this particular cohort, Gary. We are looking to fill 8 slots in January. So that's a good question. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to support more than that at this time, unless Melissa or Leslie or Tiernan, we were to say get more applications that perhaps we could support it, right?
okay.
I think that we would evaluate on a case-by-case basis once we see what our application numbers for projects and fellows are.
Right. Exactly. But we are going for 8 for this next cohort, Gary. It's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So I will leave you with that, unless I can wait a few minutes if folks are mulling over questions or if you have a comment. I'm happy to take those. But yes, if you do have if anything occurs to you after this call, please do reach out. We'd be happy to talk to you. You can give me a call or send an email. And yes, we very much look forward to receiving your applications. And thank you so much for your time.